All right, welcome back. Let's start off by talking about how you can add a lesson module to your iLearn or your Moodle course. It all starts with this green button up here that is Turn Edit On. So I'm going to go ahead and click there. And you'll notice I get all of these extra tools like the little crosshairs over here and pencils and the Edit button over here. That means that I can now edit my homepage. This is something that you probably learned early on in some of the coursework that you've done for Moodle. I'm going to start by clicking here where it says add an activity or resource. And I'm going to go to the third item down, which is lesson. And I'll scroll down here and I'll click add. That adds the module to my page. And so I need to give it a name. I'll call it sample lesson for now. In the description box, as you may have learned about Moodle by this point, you have the option of entering something that would describe what the lesson is, but you can leave that alone for now. And so what I want to do is walk through each one of the different parameters here so that you understand what it does. Under appearance is where you obviously control the way that the lesson works. And one of the things that is very helpful for students is to have a little bit of an indicator of how far along they are in a lesson, because honestly, you can make the lesson as long or as short as you want it to be. So I like to add the progress bar so it shows that they're 50% of the way through or 75% of the way through, so they know where they are and how much longer they have to go. Display menu is something that I sometimes turn on, and that will list the pages. I'll go ahead and click yes, and I'll show you what that looks like a little bit later. I did just click there, show more. And there are a few other parameters here that I'm going to encourage you when you start out to just kind of leave alone for now, except for one parameter right here, actually maybe two, where it says maximum number of answers. What that gives you is the number of possible choices on a multiple choice question, or buttons at the bottom of a page that you could choose from. I like to have a little bit more than 5 sometimes, and you might see why later on. So I'm going to make this 8 for now. That's usually the number I go with. And then I mentioned there is one other thing I want to encourage you to use, and that is default feedback. This provides students with some default feedback like, yes, you are correct, or no, you are incorrect on a question where they're going to be answering or responding to something throughout the lesson. Availability basically gives you a time to open and close the lesson. Flow control gives you a few choices here, including allowing the student to review. And as always, you can click on the little question marks, and these within a lesson will give you some further information. For instance, this one says, if enabled, students can navigate through the lesson again from the start. Provide the option to try a question again. This is something that you may choose to turn on, and that allows students to answer the question again if they got it wrong. However, this number right here is what's going to determine how they get their grade. So even though you might allow them to try questions over and over again, they only really get one try at the question before it gives them a grade. So they could answer it 4 times and get it right on the 4th try, but because they got it wrong on the first attempt, it'll count it as a wrong answer. And then you've got a few other things here that you can just leave with the defaults. The grade is something that you can change the number of points. For instance, you can set a grade to pass. You can allow students to practice the lesson. And as you'll notice from the help button here, a practice lesson doesn't appear in the grade book. And that's the Moodle grade book that it's talking about there. And then you can decide whether or not you want them to students to be able to retake the test. So you would make that say yes if you wanted them to retake not the test, but the lesson, that is. And then there are a few other options here that if you know what these are, you may want to change some of these settings, but otherwise you can stick with the defaults on those. Once you click Save and Display, that'll take us to the very first part of creating the lesson, which is setting up pages. And we'll talk about that in the next page.